Hello, BookTube. We're down in puppy territory for what I think is the last of these history bookshelf tours. So those of you who aren't interested in history probably aren't going to be interested in this video, unless Frida makes a guest appearance somewhere. and those of you who are interested in history should probably have your wish list out and open, because there's bound to be good stuff on here that you haven't heard about. So let's see. Let's start off with. Got a nice long shelf here, but it's a beautiful Sunday morning. We'll just visit for a bit. Okay. All right. This is Richard Bork's Empire and Revolution, The Political Life of Edmund Burke. Nice, big, thick thing that gives Burke a lot of his due. It overstates a lot in terms of Edmund Burke's political philosophy, putting that term in heavy air quotes. Authors like to find what they're looking for in Burke, which is why so many politicians have written about him. But he's endlessly fascinating, so any big book on the subject will be fine by me. I have heard rumors that there's an enormous Edmund Burke biography coming out in late 2019, maybe even 2020. I've heard rumors. We shall see. It's just faintly possible that I will need bookish distractions in the year 2020. Let's just move on here. Okay. This is a classic, a modern classic of survey history. This is Samuel Hines' The Edwardian Turn of Mind in a beautiful Pimlico paperback. I love Pimlico paperbacks, the ones that have just a split of colors on the spine with borders of white. I just love them. No matter what the color is, I love them. They're so well made that I can actually read them many times. I am hard on my books, and Pimlico paperbacks really hold up. They really do. If you're in a used bookstore, for instance in New York at the Strand, and you see Pimlico trade paperbacks, buy them all and send them to Steve. Anyway, this is about the man himself. There he is. Actually, I shouldn't trust that any of you recognize King Edward on sight. That's him right there. I have a sweet tooth for the Edwardian era, the brief Edwardian era, even if you include the long Edwardian era, while Victoria was still alive, which I do. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love the thinking and the people and the personalities. And I also love the writing that it tends to bring out in its historians. So, and this is just a classic of that little genre. Here's another Pimlico paperback. Oh, and it's okay. This is also about the Edwardian era. This is Eminent Victorians by Piers Brendan. This is spending my life. On and off, been my life for the last week. The title is obviously a nod to Lytton Strachey's Eminent Victorians. And this is likewise a 4-part biography. This is Northcliffe, Balfour, Pankhurst, and Baden-Powell. So we have, in the place of, some typically twisted and complex and multi-layered people who just happen to be Edwardians in here. But like Eminent Victorians, the mosaic of the 4 of them together really tells you the whole of the era, not just those 4 isolated lives. Hey, this next one is a UK trade paperback. I have a sweet tooth for UK trade paperbacks. This is John Morris's The Age of Arthur. Look at that old rotted Roman road. Isn't that an awesome cover? This is just a great big thing surveying England in the immediate aftermath of the withdrawal of the Roman Empire. So euphemistically called The Age of Arthur, although there are all sorts of Arthurian figures that you can point to in that time. Just wonderfully comprehensive and readable, even though the comprehensive part has been undercut, of course, by later scholarship, because this is like 50 years old. Oh, my inscription says I got this at the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut. I don't know when this came out. This came out in 1993, so yeah, that's been quite some time of research. Those of you who have never been to the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut, which I'm assuming is 99% of you, it is book heaven. It is book heaven. Those of you who've been watching this channel for some time have heard me talk about the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, a used bookstore that's really good, full of bargain books, full of variety and overturn of stock. And you might think I consider that to be Bookhaven, and I do, but the Book Barn is 5 buildings that do that. It's a complex of used bookstores with an uncounted number of cats. They don't know how many cats they have. They have a dog. They have a petting zoo with goats in it, and they have a koi pond. It's just an incredible experience on the Connecticut shore. Most book people don't ever get a chance to go there. But if you ever do, you should. And if you do, swing by Boston and pick me up. I would like to go back to the book barn. This next one... Okay, this next one doesn't properly belong here. It actually belongs over in biography. This is A Stroll with William James, by Jacques Barzoon, the noted snooty intellectual Jacques Barzoon. And this is just him mandarinishly appreciating the interesting James brother. William James wrote a whole bunch of stuff. All of it was really pointedly intelligent and wide-ranging, and it is also the kind of intelligent, wide-ranging stuff that just gives free rein to snooty intellectuals ever since to windify about it. Oh my God, you thought Henry James could cause people to go on at length. You got to make the acquaintance of William James. Only you should read William James instead of reading about him. Although Barzoon has some really good turns of phrase in this book. But better by far to become acquainted with William James before you become acquainted with all of the pettifoggers who have followed in his wake. And then this next one is a pamphlet. Oh, yes, okay. Okay, this is a pamphlet. This is against Amazon. It's a manifesto by Jorge Carrion, who did a book just recently on bookshops. And this was included with that book, at least with the package that I got. I don't know if it was included commercially. But this is just a tiny little pamphlet of his arguments against using Amazon.com, which I read with mixed emotions. Some of his arguments don't hold up. Most of them don't hold up. But then again, much as it reflects poorly on the me of years past, most of the arguments that I've heard against Amazon don't hold up. The one that holds up the best is that by supporting them, you are supporting a predatory super corporation, and that's not good. And you don't want to support predatory super corporations. But I maintain that this predatory super corporation does a lot to atone for its own sins. So you're also supporting a lot of good, one way or another. That's, I think, the only pamphlet on this shelf. This next one is Sean Meakin's paperback of his Ottoman Endgame. Isn't that great? They didn't use an out-of-focus sepia tone cover. They made it a very tasteful penguin illustration there for the cover. And this is just the modern Middle East, from the Arab Revolt and Lawrence of Arabia all the way to the doorstep of super oil production. So this is the East when the Middle East when it was changing, radically changing, where one young person, by the time they were 30, could see the entire world change around them. And Meakin captures that really well. He also does really well with thumbnail personality sketches. There were huge personalities that tromped all over the Middle East in the years that he covers. And he ordinarily, if an author is good at one of those personalities or two, they'll be bad at others. He's great at all of them. So what? Oh, okay. Talk about someone who's great at personalities. This is 1066, The Year of the Three Battles, by the great Frank McLynn. Frank McLynn is fantastic. If you want incredibly readable history and an incredibly readable biography, just hunt him down and buy everything that he wrote. He never wrote a bad book. And this is a Pimlico paperback. This is his study of the year of the Norman Conquest. This one is in rotten shape because it's one of the only books that survived house fire that I had a long, long time ago. I had a house fire while I was away. I left town. I almost never do that. I'm never going to do it again. But I did it, and while I was away, my apartment, the building caught fire. And that was bad enough, but then the fire department came and started pouring water into the broken windows. So I had, I think, probably 6,000, 7,000 books at the time, and hardly any of them survived. They had to be well away from all of the damage, not just the smoke, but the water. And this was one of them, thank God, because I've never seen it again. And this is his study is fantastic. We already saw David Howarth's 1066, which is a fraction of the size. But believe me, there's no padding. It's just wonderful writing. You'll be happy that there's more of it. Let's see. Okay, all right, great. This is Brian Deming's Boston, and the dawn of American independence. This is a study of Boston, the city, and Boston's role in the Revolution and in the immediate aftermath of the Revolution, the forming of a new nation. This came out fairly recently, I want to say. Yeah, 2013. So Open Letters Monthly was in full swing. And yet I don't think I ever reviewed this book. I read it and really liked it, but I don't think I ever reviewed it. And that still bothers me. It still bothers me that I let something like this go by. And I don't intend to do that with, where is it? Yeah, this thing. This is the next history of Boston. This one covers much greater time period than the dawn of American independence, and it's much bigger. But I do not intend to let this one go by. I will be reviewing this somewhere, somehow. I will be reviewing it. This next one, oh, good. This is Irwin Gellman's. This is a paperback of his, The President and the Apprentice. The President, in this case, is Dwight Eisenhower, and the Apprentice, looming in the background, is Richard Nixon. And this is a really good book, really intelligently done. I think the author sometimes massages his original sources in order to get a slightly better story than they otherwise present. And the author sometimes does a couple of soft shoe double steps to try and get around the obvious fact that Eisenhower hated Nixon. That in fact everyone hated Nixon. But nevertheless, what a lively, rousing book. Oh, you will see this paperback probably at your bookstores. It's well, it doesn't say here, but it's probably going to be $20, something like that. It's well worth it. It's well worth your money if you're interested in the time period. What's this next one? Oh, all right. This is also an advanced copy. This is from 2014. This is by Elaine Scarry, and it is Thermonuclear Monarchy, choosing between democracy and doom. And that picture looks very pretty until you realize what it is. Missile vectors, the hypothetical missile vectors. This is all about this looming ceiling that has sat over the human race for the last 60 years, this threat of thermonuclear annihilation, that is in the hands of a small number of governments, but that is capable of wiping out not only all humans on Earth, but all life on Earth, all forms of life, even bacteria. Nothing would survive a full-scale nuclear exchange. And, you know, full-scale nuclear exchange is an idiomatic way, and a euphemistic way of putting it, because it wouldn't take an exchange. It would only take one person releasing their first barrage of nuclear weapons. That in itself would do it. And this is a big, eloquent, angry book by an author who did, years ago, she did a terrific, controversial essay about 9/11. I think I have it here. So, yeah, I do have it here. It was in the Boston Review, if I remember correctly, originally, but then it was reprinted in the Best American Essays of 2003. What was it called? Citizenship in Emergency. And it's amazing. It's amazingly good. Also angry, also eloquent. Let's see here. This next one is thin. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. This is John Previs. This is Hannibal Crossing the Alps. Hannibal Crosses the Alps. This is a thin but really good study of the Punic Wars, and especially of the Second Punic War. Just a terrific book for such a small size. Really goes, I mean, you don't need much more than that to go over all of the primary sources and all the historiography. You can really do it in a book this size if you're good, and this is terrific. Just a terrific book. Okay, all right. This is Lazenby's Hannibal's War. This is a slightly older but every bit as comprehensive study of the Second Punic War. This is from 1978. This is from 1978, but it doesn't matter. John Lazenby's a fantastic writer, and he's picky about his details. So this is extremely detailed. This is as detailed about Hannibal and the disposition of his troops and the actual nature of what actually happened at the key battles that he won as you could ever get from the sources. This is the kind of book where you'll realize about 20 pages in that you can totally trust the author, and then you just lay back and listen. Okay, oh wow, this is another book that survived the fire. Wow. This is Fiona Watson, Under the Hammer. This is about Edward I and his incredibly tempestuous relationship with Scotland. And that's interesting in its own right. This is also a great study of medieval warfare, and what it is to be a medieval warrior king. It's also a fairly good portrait of Edward, who's a very mercurial and difficult king to write about. I have, over on the biography shelf, I have a biography of Edward I that's 3 times the size, and I don't know for sure that it isn't that it's better than the portrait that Watson paints here. So, again, I don't know if any of these things are still in print. Some of them must be, but sorry about that. This is the next one. Johns Hopkins. Okay, this is from relatively recently too. Yeah, 2003. This is Enrico Dandolo and the Age of Venice, the great Doge Enrico Dandolo. This is just a study of him and of his time ruling Venice at a time when Venice's nature as a city was changing, was becoming global. I have a soft spot for all things Venetian. I love the city of Venice. I love the current nature of Venice. I also love the history of Venice. I know every rock and pebble of the history of Venice. And really, this book shouldn't be here any more than the William James book should be here. This should be. I have a shelf of books for Venice, and this should be on that shelf. But I'll deal with that. That's one of the nice things about these book tours, is that they put forward in my mind the things that I need to work on. Okay. Wow. All right. This doesn't belong here at all. This is an author I've praised here before, a natural history author, a naturalist author, Edwin Way Teale. This is a walk through the year. This is a paperback recension, a paperback abridgment and adaptation of a 4-book series that he did, where he and his wife they drove through the country, through America, in order to follow each of the 4 seasons and see them happening in real time in completely different environments. And this is the 1 volume of that, and it's terrifically good. I just don't know what it's doing with all these other history books. I remember one of the reasons that I got this, I wonder, when did I get this? 2007. I got this over 10 years ago. And I remember the reason that I got it is because it's covered in irritated marginalia. Someone, I don't know if you can make it out on camera, but someone went through here and just they argued the heck with the author. They appreciated him. They also argued with him at every step of the way. And I found that by the time I was halfway done with the book, I was enjoying that as much as the book. Because ordinarily I would avoid a 1-volume abridgment like this, because the 4 volumes are incredible. They're just incredible. I wonder if they're listed here. No? What did we do? North with Spring, Journey into Summer, Autumn Across America, and Wandering Through Winter. You're going to see those books. If you're in America, you're going to see those books. Dusty old copies from somebody's attic that are on sale at a yard sale or a flea market or whatever, and you should get them because they're terrifically good. But ordinarily, I would avoid this. I would avoid an abridgment of them. But I had reading company the whole time. This angry other person who read this book. This is trade paperback. Oh my, Robert Toombs, The English and Their History. Oh, look at the size of that thing. This was so good. It was a rare instance in American publishing where the paperback was so much prettier than the hardcover, but I just got rid of the hardcover and kept this thing. And I just, as you can see, when I encounter a book review or an essay of something or other that fits with the topic of a book, or that is explicitly a review of that book, I pull it out, I cut off all of its ragged edges, I fold it up nice and neat, and I stick it in the book. That I figured out a few years ago that that's the only place I'm ever going to want those things. It's never that I'm going to get a book, just pick a random book and then go looking through a separate file for all of my collected reviews of that book. No, if they're not in the book, I'm not going to go looking for them, and I am interested in them. So that's what I do now. When I get like a periodical of some kind, not National Geographic, they don't do book reviews. I've asked. They don't do book reviews. But when I get a periodical like that, I pull out, what have we got here? The London Review of Books. I get the London Review of Books, like for instance this one is one of the more recent ones. And it's got Diarmaid MacCulloch doing In the Footsteps of King David, It's got Tim Parks writing about Memoirs from Beyond the Grave by Chateaubriand, which I have a Penguin Classic of. So that I would pull out that piece, fold it up nice and neat, and put it in that Penguin Classic. That's the only place I'm going to need it. How to Survive a Plague by David France. I have that here somewhere, and the review that's in this issue of the London Review belongs in that book, not in any kind of file. And that's what I do now. That's my I don't keep a filing system anymore now. I just put things in the books where I'm going to want them. So, what is this next one? Oh God, it's another one that's huge. It's another UK trade paperback. A lot of them on this shelf. This is The Isles by Norman Davies. Huge thing. That is just a gigantic history of the British Isles. And I loved it. I just loved it. I was happy to find a UK trade paperback because for the longest time I had the hardcover, which weighs as much as a gigantic toaster. So it's you want the paperback, and this UK trade paperbacks are made so well that I can continue to use this thing without it falling apart. Okay. All right, there's another candidate for the Venice shelf that obviously shouldn't be here. This is just the art and architecture of Venice. This is just a fairly typical, heavily illustrated look at Venice in the 3 centuries at the height of its power and fame. I don't know that I would ever reread something like this, but it certainly belongs with the Enrico Dandolo book, and they both belong on the Venice shelf. Then we have another UK trade paperback. This is John Keegan's The First World War. This is also a Pimlico paperback. You can see all the different color schemes that they have. They have all kinds of different color schemes on the spine. Doesn't matter, I want them all. but this is his one-volume history of the First World War. John Keegan is a famous military historian of the 20th century, and this is a really good job. This is the kind of thing that I often recommend to people when they ask me what is a good one-volume history of the First World War. He also did one for the Second World War. This is often the kind of thing that I suggest to them, as opposed to jumping into the deep end with some serious study that expects you to know everything that's in this book. Or books like it. But I don't know. Again, I don't know what I'm doing with it. I mean, I love Pimlico trade paperbacks, but I don't. Would I ever reread John Keegan? I don't know if I would or not. Oh, okay. All right. Here's a book with a Steve blurb. Okay. All right, well, this is a tough book, but this is Death at SeaWorld. This is it's by David Kirby, and it's his great study of killer whales in captivity being made to dance and play for a screaming audience 3 times a day. And the fact that one of those whales, Tilikum, was obviously insane. He was ripped from his parents when he was a boy. When he was a young creature, he was ripped from his parents and sent from one hellish gulag of a nature camp to another until finally he ended up at SeaWorld. And by that point, he was as big as a city bus, and he was also obviously insane. It had obviously broken his mind. The ways these animals were treated is just utterly horrific. And the way that we know that it broke his mind is because he started to kill people. He started to kill his human handlers. And he started to do it clearly with meditation. It wasn't that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's that he was waiting for them to make the slightest mistake. And one of those trainers, Dawn Branchot, was near his pen, and he grabbed her by the hair, pulled her underwater, and ripped her to pieces in front of a watching audience. And that was the beginning of the end for live killer whales at SeaWorld. And this book is incredibly good. I reviewed it for the National, and I still get mail about that review. People still pass it around. It's one of the reviews that I get the most response from, even now when it's been so long. When did this come out? 2012. Good Lord, it's been a long time, and I still get mail about that review. People still like it. If I remember, I will leave a link to it down below. But it's a horrifying book, but it was one of those books that, like The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, it really did start the levers of action moving. It really did change the picture that it was reporting on. This next one has no... okay. Because this has nothing on it at all, because this is a printed PhD thesis by Brian Jones. This is, I don't know if you can make it out, Domitian and the Senatorial Order. This is Brian Jones's extremely nerdy PhD thesis on what the role of the Senate was under the Roman Emperor Domitian, who was famously tyrannical and was the last of his kind of emperor, where he was totally tyrannical in a system that was not yet admittedly a tyranny. So there was this weird institutional schizophrenia that just ran right down the heart of the Roman state, where you are a Byzantine, bootlicking, floor-prostrating dictatorship, but you have this Senate that's allegedly electoral and allegedly has power over the laws and over the civil life of the state. And this is an incredible study of that duality. I don't think it was ever made into a book. I don't think it ever became a book. But oh, okay, great. This is the paperback copy of Richard Evans' Europe, 1815 to 1914. So, huge revolutions and the dawn of world wars and a whole new era. And this is a great big study of those that just ranges all over creation. It's a big, baggy book, but it was really enjoyable. This is, of course, the author of a great trilogy on the Third Reich that I don't have. I have the Third Reich at War, but I don't have the Third Reich, the Coming of the Third Reich, or the Third Reich in Power. I don't have either one of those volumes. I need to correct that. Because I know that the next time there's a big study of the Third Reich or of Hitler, I'm going to want to go back to those books. I've gone back to the Third Reich at War many times. So I need to fix that. But in the meantime, I have this, and that's great. And what have we got here? Oh, okay. This is the Penguin History of the United States. This is a state without borders. The United States in its world in the age of civil wars, 1830 to 1910. And I loved it. I ordinarily don't love things like this because these installments in the Penguin History of the United States, the Oxford History of the United States, whatever, I usually find them worthy but kind of scattershot. And this was scattershot, but it was so eloquent that I didn't mind. I really liked it. I sent my advanced copy and my finished copy to two different readers. So I was waiting for the Penguin trade paperback. I'm glad that I did. And then this last one is enormous. Oh, right, okay. All right, this is John Adams. This is the Noble Revolt. This is a gigantic book about the revolt against King Charles I. The incredible action that was taken to overthrow, supplant, defeat on the battlefield, then try and execute a duly ordained king. And this is the whole of that subject just in one big, incredibly authoritative book. So I loved it, of course, needless to say. And that is it. That is a big, fat history bookshelf tour with a couple of things in here that aren't history, a couple of things in here that belong elsewhere, and one thing in here that was never published. So I think it was never published. So there you go. So I'll have to check and see. Maybe the Brian Jones big book did get published. But that's it. That, I think, finishes our history section of this room. So we'll move on to other sections next. In the meantime, this video has gone on way too long. So I'll wrap this up. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.